Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, fresh off of trade talks with his Chinese counterpart in Madrid, saying he believes the U.S. and China can reach a deal before the pause on steep tariffs expires in November, anticipating another round of talks before then. Speaking to CNBC, Bessent saying, quote, each one of those talks has become more and more productive. I think the Chinese now sense that a trade deal is possible. For more on what to watch as negotiations continue, Shehzad Qazi, China Beige Book International Managing Director, is joining me now. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Do you share the Treasury Secretary's optimism?
Well, look, a deal is possible, but I think we need to be careful about what that really means. I don't think we're going to see any kind of big blockbuster U.S.-China Phase 2 agreement. At best, I think what the Treasury Secretary is talking about, they're inching towards some kind of Phase 1 redux, where China perhaps makes a commitment to buy a certain amount of U.S. goods and such in exchange for us bringing the tariffs down further and so forth.
So does that mean that there is a meaningful change from what was achieved in the first Trump presidency, for example? Like, kind of set the table for us. What's different now? What could be achieved out of this that wasn't achieved then?
As a matter of fact, nothing at all. The first agreement would probably look more ambitious at this point because at least it claimed on paper that they were seeking to achieve structural changes from within China that was going to alter somehow that trading relationship they have where China just gets to dump its products abroad and the U.S. runs a bit major deficit. That's not happening this time around, I think, at all. And if you think about the bigger picture goal of altering America's trading relations with the world's second largest economy, well, that is now looking like a goal that's receding in the back.
And if you look at the backdrop, which is what you do, you try to look at the real economic indicators behind the official economic data coming out of China. Looking through that prism, how motivated is China at this point?
Well, look, there is no pressure on them still to come to the table with any kind of big deal or any kind of big gives. As a matter of fact, if you look at China Beige Book's August data, what we saw was that the economy is actually starting to turn a little bit of a corner, it seems like. Things are finally getting better compared to year-ago levels. The consumer spending results actually looked fine. Manufacturing looks like its orders picture is pretty strong. So whereas I think China may have exaggerated how strong they were earlier in the year and is seemingly putting out somewhat softer data now, we're seeing the reverse. They got hit initially when the tariffs went into place and are actually seem to be climbing out of that as the summer comes to an end.
Why is that happening? Because you would think, with the tariffs that, some manufacturers are pulling back on orders still or moving capacity when they can to other countries.
Yeah, we don't, I think, have the kind of big exodus of Chinese manufacturing out of or manufacturing out of China, I should say. Instead, what you're getting is China's trade with Southeast Asian countries has been exploding. Its trade now we know with Africa is exploding. And so what is probably going on is that where direct U.S.-China trade might be slowing down, you're getting most likely a pretty serious rerouting of goods happening, transshipment, which is the other big concern, of course, that the U.S. Trade Representative's office and the administration have had.
Yeah, and they have said that they're going to try to prevent that in various ways, that rerouting, if you will. But it sounds like that effort is not really changing much at this point.
Oh, I don't think much has been done at all. I know that there's some task force that has been announced to the Department of Justice. We'll see what they accomplish. But the reality is this is an incredibly cumbersome project, and that kind of, I think, capacity, quite frankly, doesn't even exist here in the United States, let alone existing in places like Vietnam and Cambodia.
Right. So when you talk about that the economic data is now actually looking a little bit better, would you call it an inflection point? Would you go so far as to say that we are really going to see more of an expansion there? Trade deal or no trade deal, by the way?
I think so, because a lot of the pressures seem to be, at least for now, receding. And so it is quite likely that the third quarter, rather than being this boring story that we were getting out of China, at least in our results, which was the economy continues to swim in place, it may actually look like it's turning a bit of a corner, as I said. That's still TBD. We're still running our results, or we're still gathering our results, I should say.
Well, looking forward to that. I talked to an investor in China yesterday, and he sort of said some similar things to your comments. The one thing he still is talking about is the property market, which hasn't really recovered there. But he seemed less convinced it needs to. It's still important, he said. It still would help if it recovered. But it's not sort of that vital piece. Clearly, if the numbers are are improving without it. What's your thinking around that?
I actually agree with that. And whereas Beijing would like to see the housing market recover to a certain extent, they no longer need it to be, or even want it to be, more importantly, that old 25 to 30% of GDP, which was incredibly unsustainable and dangerous for the economy. So the housing market, it looked like the pain was easing for the last year and a half or so. It's sort of going sideways right now. We'll see where the housing market lands at the end of this year. But the truth is that it is no longer that kind of linchpin of economic growth, and Beijing has been fairly successful in accomplishing that.
Interesting. To go back to trade for a moment, I want to ask about the companies that have sort of been caught in all of this. Thinking of Nvidia, which the Chinese government has been investigating. I'm thinking of TikTok, which Bessent says we're now close to some sort of a deal to allow it to continue operating in the U.S. How should we be? Do you think that there will be progress on those individual situations, and how important are they to the overall talks, do you think?
I mean, they're incredibly important, but what we've seen in the last few months is that there has been sort of this rollback of export controls, which has been incredibly bullish for companies like Nvidia and others in that space. Obviously, we've got a TikTok deal of some sort that's going to be announced, which is not going to be a full divestiture and so forth, which means that chances are very high of it going through now with China. Mm-hmm. Putting aside all the problems it's going to run into domestically. So look, Nvidia is kind of winning the day in Washington, D.C. right now. And so that has been quite good for them. It raises, of course, very serious concerns long run for the U.S.-China tech competition.
Well, and long term as well, there used to be China hawks in Washington who were concerned about, had what seemed like some credible concerns about national security, whether it was TikTok, whether it was technology being shipped into China. Are those people, where are those people?
I think the China hawks are still around. Some of them are keeping a low profile. And others, especially those on the opposite side of the aisle, so the Democrats, for the time being, have decided to not be as loud and rather criticize the tariffs, right? And criticize the president's other policies rather than making China the center point of what they're doing. So China hawks are not to be seen as often in D.C. as they were perhaps even 10 months ago.
No, it's really been interesting. Thanks a lot. Good to see you, Shehzad.